And welcome back to TL Talks Podcast. I am TL. As usual, it's good to have you. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe. If you like the video, you should hit the like button. If you like it a lot, or God forbid, love it, you should hit the subscribe button. That basically just gives you notifications whenever I put out new stuff. It's greatly appreciated, so thanks in advance. We'll get it right into it. My first segment is called The Thought of the Day. My thought of the day for this month, which is November, man, time flies, November of 2020, 2022, has to do with how you treat people. So I've mentioned in previous podcasts that my Uncle Jim recently passed away, and people pass away all the time. But I think an important thing to keep in mind when it comes to how we treat people is what I think is you should treat people like they could be gone tomorrow, right? So there's people in your life that you talk to all the time, you're best friends with, you're on good terms with. There's people that you kind of, fell out of touch with. There's people you've had a falling out with. There's always different variations, right, of these different people that are in your life or not in your life for different reasons. That's all fine and dandy, and that's acceptable. It's very reasonable. What I would say the bigger point is that since anybody could pass away tomorrow, nobody's guaranteed to be here tomorrow, including myself. I think it's important to treat people accordingly, right? So if it's a family member or a close friend and you guys had a falling out and you no longer talk to each other or you don't like each other or whatever, that happens. But I'd encourage you to dig deep about how you would feel if that person passed away, because once they pass away, there's no takebacks. You don't get to say I'm sorry or I love you or anything. Once they're gone, and that's obviously very final. So I would just encourage you to just take a hard look at that. Everybody in your life, even people that aren't in your life, a hard look at who's in your life, how you treat them, and if they were to pass away tomorrow, would you be at peace with that? Would you be at peace with things ending the way they are right now? And if not, you should act accordingly, whether that's mending a relationship or apologizing to somebody, swallowing your pride and being the bigger person. Sometimes it's not, sometimes they don't even deserve that. They were in the wrong and you weren't in the wrong, and they don't really deserve that. But maybe it wouldn't sit well with you if they passed away. Maybe, it wouldn't be the right move. So that's my advice to you. If you're willing to take it, just take a hard look at everybody in your life, everybody that's not in your life, how you treat them or don't treat them, and then just think, if they were to pass away tomorrow, would you be at peace with that, or would that be that fill you with regret? I think living with regret is one of the hardest things to do in life, and I would hope that you don't have a lot of regret in your life, but I know I don't want to have a lot of regret, and so that's my thought of the day for the month of November. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Next segment is called If I Were President. So if you know me, you know that I'm not president of the United States. I'm not even in politics, so that's pretty far-fetched. But I thought of this segment about a year ago, and I thought it would be a fun little thing to share with you guys because, I have ideas like everybody else. I happen to think that my ideas are worth sharing. I think they're all things that are practical that could be implemented, and they're just nice to get off my chest. And from the feedback I've gotten from people say they enjoy that segment, and they usually agree with it. So hopefully you enjoy this. So my if I were president segment for this month is what I would do if I were president is I would implement a double punishment to certain populations. So those populations could be teachers, police officers. Those two are the ones that come to mind, right? Because teachers are, people that are put in charge of young people to educate them and protect them, make sure they're safe and growing, at least intellectually. So when you kind of you have somebody in that role and they take advantage of that, or they, do something messed up to the kids, or with the kids, I think that's pretty horrible. You know what I mean? Like, parents are sending their kids to school for them to get educated and to be safe. So whether it's school shootings or something like a teacher doing something messed up to a student, that's just so wrong on so many levels. And so what I think I would implement is a double punishment. So the two things that come to mind, well, I guess three. If there's a person that's a school shooter, I think that whatever their punishment it should be multiplied by two. I think killing kids is just gross on so many levels. And I think, well, I guess my idea doesn't really, I wasn't really thinking of school shooters until I started talking about school. It was more about teachers and police officers. So we know that there's a lot of police officers that have been in the news recently in the last like 5 years, like more so. But we're seeing more and more coverage of police officers doing things that appear to be unethical, right? Whether it's over punishing somebody or killing somebody, or you've seen it. You know what I'm talking about. So what I think is I think there's good people and bad people. When it comes to police officers, there's no difference. They're just people, right? So you're going to have good people and bad people, good cops and bad cops. I think that there's enough bad cops and there's enough coverage on it now that we should up the ante on how they're dealt with, right? So I feel like I have a lot of respect for police. I think it's because I was in the military. They have a hard job that I wouldn't want to do. And so I have a lot of respect for that. But these guys that are pieces of shit, that are, racist or just abuse their authority, you know what I'm saying? And hurt people when they're supposed to be there to serve and protect. It's just really gross. And so the way it's set up right now is policemen and policewomen are held in, high esteem. When they die, there's a big parade for them, and they celebrate their lives. And while they're alive and serving, it seems like the justice system kind of protects them in a way. So when they're in trouble for doing something, like I just said, it seems like they get a lighter sentence or no sentence at all, as opposed to if it was a normal citizen like you or I, we would get what we get. So I have a problem with that. I think most people would have a problem with that. So what I am saying that I would do differently if I was the president of the United States is I would just double the penalties. So if, the standard penalty for X, Y, and Z is 5 years, now it's 10. So now I think that would be a little bit more of a, it would help cops think twice about what they're doing. And I think they're already having to do that to a certain degree because there's so much publicity. But I think that if you up the ante on how much they can be punished, that might help them curb their behavior in a good way. And so that's my idea. So that's my If I Were President segment. Next is called TLRantz. So my segment called TLRantz is just about things that get on my bleeping nerves that I like to get off my chest. And so I appreciate you listening. This month's segment for TLRantz, unfortunately, is about the VA. So the Veterans, is it administration or association? Anyways, you know what the VA is. It's for veterans. So I was in the Navy for 4 years. When I got out, I heard a lot of bad things about the VA. And I was like, well, that sucks. But I didn't really use the VA much. So I had a good job at Kaiser Permanente for a handful of years. And they had really good insurance. And so I used them instead. But then when I quit that job to get into real estate, I kind of needed to use the VA again for obvious reasons. And the good news is my experience with the VA wasn't very much, but my experience before I left Kaiser to do real estate wasn't that bad. I went there for a colonoscopy. That was good. Everything went normal. They took good care of me. Everybody was nice. They seemed like they were competent, and scheduling wasn't too hard. So I wasn't unhappy with that. Well, unfortunately, folks, now I'm starting to see why there's so many bad rumors and talk about the VA and how they operate. So for me, and I'm only speaking from my experience, I have been trying to do a couple things. So I've been trying to get my sleep apnea treated. I had a sleep apnea machine through Kaiser. That machine broke, like the hose on it broke, so like it didn't function anymore. So I need to get a new machine. I got to get the new machine through the VA. The VA wants me to get my sleep study records from Kaiser, have them forwarded to the VA, which is fine. I call them medical records. They send me an authorization form to release those records. I fill out the form. I fax it from Office Max. I call them the next day, make sure they received it. They said, no, we didn't receive it. So I say, okay, well, how can I get it to you? I say, well, if you want to go to a Kaiser office, they can do it for you. I go to a Kaiser office up the road. They fax it. It gets there. So now they have the authorization form, which means they can release the records. So they received it. They confirmed that they received it. And then from there, they're supposed to send those records to the VA. So I call the VA about a week or two later and ask them if they've received the records. They say no. So they asked me for like Kaiser's number to get the records, basically. So fast forward, like it's been a month or two, right, that I've been dealing with this like runaround with the VA of not getting, like, it's been so tedious. And people are saying the same things. Oh, I'll send a message to so-and-so and they'll get back to you. So it's very frustrating, right? Like the two things I've been trying to get taken care of for myself is sleep apnea treatment and mental health, basically, right? So I'm a huge advocate for mental health. I think that therapy is useful. I think pretty much almost everybody alive could use therapy, myself included. So I haven't went to therapy in years, and I realized that there's a void in my life, like that would help me a lot in a few different ways. And so I've been trying to pursue that through the VA. Well, that's also been a hassle. So they like have this weird thing where they offer you short-term mental health or long-term mental health, but you got to get a referral, and then somebody's going to call you back in 24 hours. They never call you back. So that whole thing's been very stressful as well. I don't have any appointments with mental health. I don't have any progress. Well, I guess I have some progress, but I don't have a new sleep apnea machine. So last week it got to the point where I ordered a sleep apnea machine online just because I've run out of patience. Like if you guys aren't familiar with sleep apnea, it is like a debilitating thing. It basically is a condition where you like stop breathing basically while you're sleeping. And so it interrupts your sleep. So you don't get much REM sleep, which is the quality sleep that you need to refresh your body. And what that does is it not only doesn't give you any quality sleep, but it also can kill you faster. And so I don't know about you, but I'm not trying to die anytime soon. And so I prefer to stick around for a while, and sleep apnea can kill you. So mental health and sleep apnea are pretty big deals. I've been trying to get them taken care of for a while. I have not had much progress, and that's frustrating as shit. And so I really wish that wasn't the case. I think it's a mixture of understaffing for the VA and maybe workload being too much. But regardless, it just sucks. And so I wish I had other options, but I don't. And so fingers crossed I can get those things taken care of soon. So that's my TLRantz for this month. Kind of sad, but it's my reality, so I wanted to share it with you guys. Real quick, we're going to go into a quick football talk before we get into the interview. I want to talk about the Browns and Bandits, my two teams. The Cleveland Browns are underachieving. Shocker. So I think we're 3-6 now, if I remember correctly. I think our record's 3-6. My prediction was we're going to be 6-5 with Jacoby Brissett, and then 4-2 with Deshaun Watson with a chance at the playoffs. That is obviously not going to be the case. We have 6 losses. 4 of them were winnable games. There was the huge collapse versus the Jets. We could have beat the Falcons. We lost by 3 to them. And there's 2 other games we could have won also. Oh, the Ravens. Lost to 3 to the Ravens also. And there's a 4th game. So there's 4 games that we could have won that we didn't win. Unfortunately for us, that means we're pretty much at the brink of this season being a wash. Everybody's been waiting for Deshaun Watson to come back in 2 weeks. And unfortunately, unless we were to beat the Bills this week and then beat the Buccaneers the following week, the chances are very slim that we'll be able to get in the playoffs this year after Deshaun comes back, and that's very disappointing. We just find ways to lose. I like Jacoby Brissett. I think he's a good guy. I think he's a solid backup quarterback, but there's a reason he's been a backup his whole career. And so when you watch Browns games, you see why he's a backup. So he's not accurate. He's not overly athletic. And so our receivers are having to dig balls out of the ground, or off the ground, and make really hard catches all the time because he's not accurate. Or a receiver will have the DB beat over top, and he'll underthrow it. So the receiver will have to stop to catch the ball, and in turn gets tackled because he had to, slow down to catch the ball. So it's just really frustrating to watch. I've been watching mediocre quarterback play for over 20 years now. So I'm just really over it. But there are brighter days ahead. Deshaun Watson's awesome. He's a top 5 or top 10 quarterback in the NFL. And so I cannot wait to see an accurate quarterback like him in our offense and see how our offense looks. At this point, I think it's going to be like a preview for next season because this season's on the brink of being a wash, which is very sad. But nonetheless, it is what it is. At the end of the day, I'm an Italian guy sitting on a couch. I have no control over, anything. I'm just watching the TV, so it kind of is what it is. But I'm trying to be positive. Hopefully we find a way to compete with the Bills and the Buccaneers with Jacoby Brissett. If we play in Buffalo, I heard that there could be a foot of snow, which would be interesting because we're definitely a better running game. We have a better running attack than the Buffalo. So we'll see. Fingers crossed. So stay tuned. Real quick, we're going to talk about the Bandits before we get into the interview. So Denver Bandits are a football team, a women's tackle football team that I am a coach for. We are done with all of our tryouts. Our roster is starting to come together. Our coaching staff is starting to come together. We have a lot of new talent, some good talent coming from different teams, and I cannot wait. If anything, I just wish I could fast forward time to when we know who we have, who we don't have. We've installed the offense and defense. We saw how that goes with our new OC, Rashad Ray, who's awesome. I just am anxious to see all that works out. And so I'm not nervous about it not working out. I just am curious how it's actually going to – I want to see it in action, you know what I mean? And so just anxious, basically. But, yeah, all 3 of our tryouts are done. Most of our roster is set for next year. We got a rough draft of the schedule, which looks very intriguing, very tough. We play all hard games, which is fine. We're in the WNFC. That's what the league's about. So we'll see if that becomes the final schedule, but I basically can't wait. I mean, I am not afraid of the smoke. I'm not afraid to play anybody, and I embrace the opportunity to plan for those things. So what I do for the team is I break down film of opponents so that we're prepared, and so that us having a crazy schedule is good for me because I'm challenged to be, on my P's and Q's and make sure that, we're prepared to play these elite teams. And so can't wait. One thing I want to touch on before I get into the interview is I have a buddy named Mickey he was in the Navy with me that brought up something to me. He like texted me about it. He said that in one of my previous podcasts, I had said a statement about ADHD and how I feel like everybody has it. Like, I feel like I have it, everybody around me has it, and it just seems like everybody has ADHD, they can't focus, and it's just ridiculous. And I said the reason I think that is because I think that our brains aren't really wired to handle all the stimulus and information that is available to us these days. So whether it's social media or Google searches or whatever, I just think it's too much. I don't think that our brains process all that fluidly, most of us. And so since I just have an average brain, maybe even below average, I feel like I've had a harder time focusing as time progresses. I don't know if it's an age thing or what's going on, but it's frustrating. And I noticed that other people have that too. And so that's why I said it. Well, I did some research. I'm going to pull it up on my phone. And he basically just said that I should correct myself because what I said wasn't true. And he's mostly right. All right, so myth number 3. I'm reading this from an article. Myth number 3, everyone has ADHD. While diagnosis of ADHD in adults and children is on the rise, it is far from everyone. The CDC says 9.4% of American children have, at one point or another, received a diagnosis of ADHD. For adults, that portion is about 4.4%, according to the National Institute of Mental Health. But I have a theory as to why many aspects of ADHD are relatable. Our world has gotten so complex. If we view ADHD more through the lens of executive dysfunction, it is easy to see how most people can experience ADHD symptoms sometimes. Human brains simply were not designed for the level of organization, decision-making, and social interactions. The amount of executive function that modern life considers normal. Throw on the global pandemic and widespread trauma, and you've got a lot of people operating with reduced executive function, overwhelmed by their own expectations. But people with ADHD aren't fixed by a change of environment or a simpler life. It is a core part of who they are, and it can have devastating consequences. People with ADHD are far more likely to drop out of school, rarely complete college, have few or no friends, underperform at work, engage in antisocial or illegal activities, including drugs. They are also more likely to experience depression and other serious comorbid psychiatric conditions, like oppositional defiance disorder and even suicidal ideation. So that's the article that I found, which is from a credible medical source. So I would say Mickey's take on it, he's definitely right. Saying that everybody has ADHD is ridiculous. I obviously didn't mean that literally. But the facts are that ADHD is pretty rare. And so to say that everybody has it, it's obviously far from the truth because only 4.4% of adults have it. So ADHD, the clinical diagnosis of that is very rare. I think what I was referring to when I was talking about it was just what the article talked about was the symptoms, right? Or how they word that. Yeah, ADHD symptoms. So that's what I was referring to. But to Mickey's point, I do care about accuracy. That's kind of how I'm built. I care about accuracy probably way more than I should. But I do. I care about accuracy. And so for what it's worth, I apologize. That wasn't my intention to put out bad information. But I appreciate Mickey bringing it up. I think he had good intentions. We've talked about how his delivery isn't what I would prefer, but that is what it is. But I think he had good intentions, and he's right that what I said isn't literally true. And so I guess my point is that I wanted to own up to me saying something that was literally inaccurate, but also I want to challenge you guys, anybody that's listening to this, to feel free to reach out to me. If I say something that you think is just flat out wrong, or like, I like said something and misspoke, and you would like to correct me, listen, by all means. I do care about accuracy. I do care about being correct. Some things are opinions, but even I want my opinions to be, have some weight. And so I have no problem with anybody reaching out to me to challenge me on something that I said. And I try to be as accurate as I can. And so thanks for the grace ahead of time. So without further ado, we're going to get into the interview. My interview is with Miss Kyhle Jamerson of the Houston Mambas, which is a brand new team in the WNFC. I have never met Kyhle before, so the interview was awesome. I got to get to know her, get to know the team. I cannot wait. She's one of the people that might be on our schedule this year. And so it was a really awesome interview. I'm sure you'll enjoy it as much as I did. And so without further ado, here we go. Miss Kyhle Jamerson. All right. I would like to welcome Miss Kyhle Jamerson to TL Talks podcast. Kyhle, the Houston Mambas are the talk of the town in the WNFC this season. And so, first of all, thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I said, the only thing that I want to get into before we start talking football, which is going to be the most of the interview, is you as a person. So the cool thing about having this podcast is about half the time I interview people that I haven't met in person. And so I'm able to get to know you as a person and get to know your team and kind of get some insight. And so I don't know anything about you, Kyhle. I've heard you were a former player, because I heard one of the cool things about the Houston Mambas is their ownership is 3 women that used to play. And obviously DeAndre Hopkins, which is a pretty big name, which is Keisha's brother. So I assume you're a former player, but I don't know for sure anything. And so I'd love to know more about you as far as your childhood, where you grew up, whatever you're willing to share, basically.
Perfect. How much time do you have?
We have an hour.
No, I'm just messing. So hi, Kyhle Jamerson, and where do I start? So I was born in the Philippines. We'll just start from the beginning. My childhood, military brat. So I was born in the Philippines. I'm actually a dual citizen. Grew up in San Diego until I was about 12. My parents were transferred over to the Pentagon. And then I spent the rest of my adolescent years in DC, in the DC area. Okay. So I'm a DC native, if anybody ever asks. And then after I graduated high school, I went to college in Texas. And then I just actually never left. Texas grew on me. It's very cheap to live, if you've never heard, but it's pretty cheap to live here. And so, it just became a home. I found myself here, grew into kind of who I was, played basketball all of my life, actually. Semi-pro, played in college, played AAU. And then one day just randomly was like, I'm going to play football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I met this young lady, her name's Ty, and we met in San Antonio, and she's like, I feel like you'd be great at football. And I was like, I've never played football. I watch it, don't really know much about the game as a player. And so she's like, man, just come to practice, check it out. And then, 12 years, 15 injuries later, here we are, team owner, no longer playing. But I played the game for 12 years. I played across the 8-man, IWFA, IWFL, WFA, and then the WNFC. I played AFE USA. So I feel like I have a pretty extensive,
experience
background when it comes to football. Yeah.
Okay. So like I said, most of the interview is going to be about football, but I don't want to get like sucked into that too easily. So I'm very interested in people, right? So you said you're a dual citizen.
Yes.
And you're a military brat. You spent time in San Diego, DC. Then went to school in Texas, and Texas kind of grew on you, and you were like, "There's no reason to leave,"
Right.
Which is cool. I'm actually, not that it's about me, but I was born in Dallas, Texas, but then I moved to Ohio when I was a very small child, and so pretty much all my memories are in Ohio. And then I moved to a few different states. I live in Colorado now, obviously, and so I kind of stumbled into women's football like you did. So one of my first questions about football is kind of how you stumbled upon it. But before we get into that, let me piece together some things. So you were a military brat and you lived in a couple different states. And then you were a basketball player, which is interesting to me because a lot of the biggest names in our sport were previous basketball players, right? So you have OJ Jenkins was a hooper, Ninji Martin in San Diego, she was a hooper. Kristen London on our team in Denver.
Yep.
He won basketball player. You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. So I see a common theme there, which is interesting to me. I guess my first question would be, would you say that there being high-level basketball players that end up transferring to football, would you say that there's a reason that those two sports kind of mesh up? Or do you think it's just a competitive sport athlete finding another sport to play? You know what I'm saying? What would you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think it is just the competitive nature of the sport. I've always been an extreme competitor in everything that I do, whether we're playing, Go Fish, War, bowling, anything. I'm very competitive. I hate to lose. And so I felt like football would be something similar, but also different. It would challenge me to push my body and train my body in different ways than I never had in basketball. Of course, majority of my basketball career was played indoor. I never really played too much outside. I didn't hoop too much outside, but inside, that was my thing. So being able to transition to an outside sport with all climates, different, whether I'm playing on turf, grass, whatever the case may be, it was a little bit different for my body. And so I wanted to see, is this something that I could really do? And 12 years later, here we are.
Yeah. So that's what I figured the answer would be, especially being a high level basketball player. I play football and basketball myself, so I can relate, but if you're a competitor, you're a competitor. And what I love about your story in particular, Kyhle, is that you had never played football. You had played basketball at a high level, and you had opportunity to try a new sport. There was going to be a big adjustment for you. And you grabbed it by the horns and tried it. You know what I mean? Some people, that's what frustrates me. I've been coaching women's football for about 8 years-ish. And as you know, one of the hardest things about women's football is recruiting, right? So like you're trying to think, okay, how can I think outside the box? How can I recruit? And, you see some girl in the supermarket and you're like, man, she looks like she could play, right? But you're not trying to make her feel some type of way. You're not trying to like offend her. You know what I mean? Like, so it's tough, like having that conversation, but that's very cool. I like your story. I was in the military myself. So before I moved to Colorado, I was in the Navy for 4 years, not a military brat, but did my 2 deployments and definitely don't regret that. So we have a few things in common. So before we get into the Houston Mambas in particular, I have a couple nosy questions. My first nosy question is what positions you played in basketball and what positions you played in football.
All right. So in basketball, I played 1, 2, 3, and 4. Never played center, but shooting guard, point guard. I would probably have to say I'm a better like small forward. I got little bunnies, I got a little bounce. Not anymore though, I'm old, but when I was young and injury free. Yes.
Yeah.
Then with football, I played quarterback. My very last position would be quarterback, but I'm a true tight end. Love playing tight end, slot receiver, wide out, DN, and then outside linebacker if need be. But if I had to narrow it down to my 2, it's tight end and DN.
Okay. Gotcha. Interesting. Okay. So you played all the positions except for center in basketball. And then on football, you played a lot of stuff, but DN and tight end are probably your bread and butter. Those feel like they fit your skill set the most.
Absolutely. And I feel like I've been able to play in multiple positions because when we started off, or at least when I first started playing football around 2000 and maybe 2009, 2010 time frame, that's when we played both ways. We didn't have large teams. So women right. So it's really like, hey, you're going to learn how to do everything on this team, and we really are going to stick you where you need, where we need you. And so that's kind of how I got into playing multiple positions, and then figured out, hey, I like this the best. I really don't like this. And then coming to the WNFC, having a team where there are multiple players where you can just play one position.
Yeah.
Focus
how about that? Yeah.
So if I had to pick, though, definitely tight end.
Okay. And then for you talked about how you played for about 12 years, and now that you've played for a long time and you've had injuries, you're ready, like Keisha, you're ready to just call that quits, but now it's stepping into a new role as an owner of a team in the WNFC, which is super exciting. Totally different, but same game, just a different role. My last question for you before we get into the WNFC and the Houston Mambas is, what teams did you play for? I know you said you played some 8-man, and then you went to 11-man, and you played in a few different leagues, but I'm curious, what teams did you play for besides AFE? I know AFE, I have players that play there too. But what teams did you play for in those leagues?
So I'll just start with 8-man. With 8-man, I played for the Texas Legacy, played for the Austin Ravens, played for Team Texas. That's a traveling international 8-man team.
Okay.
When we get over to the 11-man aspect, the Houston Energy, I played the season that it was COVID. So we actually never had a season. So that was the one time we were just doing practice with them. And then the Camo County, nobody probably ever heard of that team. It was an extension of the Energy. Brian owned both teams, but we had it in New Braunfels and then one in Houston. And then played for the San Antonio Regulators. And I think that is the only 11-man team. Yeah. And then Houston Heat in the WNFC.
Okay. Gotcha. All right, that's cool. So Houston's definitely where you live, and the area that you prefer to stay in. It sounds like you moved there and never wanted to leave, which is cool. And I guess my first question would be, this is a good segue. Since the Regulators and the Heat were the two 11-man teams, 11-woman teams that you played on, I find it interesting, not in a bad way, but I find it interesting that you have that experience of playing in the WNFC for the Houston team, which is a Houston Heat, and then being a part of the team that replaces them, right? And so I'm not trying to throw any shade towards the Heat. You know what I mean? I have love for all teams.
Absolutely.
If they folded, that's unfortunate. You know what I mean? But it is what it is. But I would say my first question for you, and now we're getting into the thick of things, is how would you describe your experience with the Heat as opposed to the experience you're trying to provide for female athletes with the Houston Mambas?
Right. So what really attracted me to the WNFC, I'll just say this before I even got to the WNFC, was the championship weekend.
Yeah.
I have never in my life seen such an organized, well put together weekend of football. I mean, it really was top notch. And I was like, man, why haven't I been playing in the WNFC?
The whole time, you're right.
Yeah, the competition is amazing. I will say there are a lot of good players in the WFA. I feel like in the WNFC, the competitive level is just kicked up, a whole different notch. The women train different, they look different, they hit different.
Yeah, marketing's different.
Yeah, the marketing's different. Everything's different. And so I was like, what, this is something that I really want to be a part of. So when I moved to Houston, came to, the Houston Heat, and I think that I wish I would have gotten the experience that I feel like all of the other teams were getting, but I also didn't know what I didn't know because, this is my first experience.
Yeah.
Right. So, we're going along with the season, and I think that we had the right players. It's just that, everybody, I guess it's kind of like too many Chiefs, not enough Indians, right? Everybody wants to do a little bit of everything. And I think we would have had a better season if, people were able to get along, as far as coaching staff, if we're able to just put together a cohesive plan as a team and make adjustments. I think the biggest thing was making adjustments. Nobody really wanted to listen too much. And so being a player now turned owner, that's really huge to all of us, myself, Keisha, Smitty, and DeAndre, is actually listening to the players, because not having an input is a difficult place to be when you're a player, especially when you're the one playing. If I tell you, hey, TL, like, they're blitzing every time off the line, and you're not making any adjustments, and I'm telling you, and you can see it and you don't do anything, it's just kind of like,
well, what are we doing?
What are you going to listen to me? Like, I'm telling you, every play blitzing and you're not making any adjustments. It's kind of like, you don't know, just play. And so that's a difficult environment to be in when you don't have a voice. And I think that's a lot of the common, denominator between all the players is like, nobody's really hearing us. And so we don't want that for the new Houston team. And so we really have that perspective of the player. Like, when we're talking to players that were interested in coming to Houston, we ask them, what is important to you as a player on a team? Let us know. And that was one of the big things is, they want to be heard. They want to be understood. We asked some of the girls that were coming from the Houston Heat team onto the new team, what is important to you transitioning to a new team? Because frankly, in Houston, it was the Houston Heat, Houston Energy, Houston Power, the Phoenix Fire. There's like 5 teams here. And so it's kind of like, what is it that we could do different that the other teams are not providing you? What is it that you need from us to make sure that, y'all are keeping us honest and we're giving you what you need? And so we listened and then we just delivered on that. And I believe that they trust us. I really believe that they trust us because we really do have their best interest at heart. And that's the most important for us.
Gotcha. You're preaching. I like it. So I guess my next comment that comes to mind, and my podcast, I'm very deliberate to keep it kind of unbiased. I'm, of course, like I love the WNFC. I'm in the WNFC. I have opinions, right? Like that's fine. But I try to keep it as unbiased as possible. But something that came to mind while you were talking was, who Burmy is, of course, and Burmy has his opinions, right? And it's pretty obvious that he prefers the WFA over the WNFC. Well, what I found funny, Kyle, was he made a post on social media about like the Houston Heat being removed from the WNFC and the WNFC not saying thank you or like showing no kudos to them for being one of their founding teams. And yet like, it was kind of like fake drama, right? Well, what's interesting to me is the coach, I think he's the head coach, maybe the owner, maybe both. Whoever that guy is for the Houston Heat, I just happened to stumble upon a comment that he made on Facebook, right? And the comment that he made spoke volumes to me. And what he said was, yes, we were removed from the league, but if I were to do it over again, I wouldn't have done a thing different.
Right.
Wow. I said, think about that. You were removed from the league because you weren't up to par, and you still wouldn't have done it differently. Like the chances of somebody saying that, like most people are going to be like, screw that league. You know what I mean? Like, F bombs and stuff. But he said, no, I would have done the same thing. So that, I mean, to me, what else needs to be said? You know what I mean? Like the WNFC is not a perfect league. No league is perfect. There's things they can do better. But like you said, what they've been able to provide for female athletes that wasn't really available before now, it just is amazing. And so for me, I very humbly am just proud to be a part of it. Do I wish that I had like more of a voice and I could help them do things differently or better? Yeah, I do. But even if they don't do anything differently, it's still so much better as far as how they're able to stream games, their marketing's on point, the sponsorships they've been able to, attain. I mean, just across the board, like you said, it's just a different level of competition. And so I couldn't be happier to be a part of it. And so I just wanted to mention that because it came to mind about Burmy kind of, throwing some shade, and then the actual Houston Heat dude, I don't know if he's head coach or owner, saying,
Right.
if I were to do it over again, I wouldn't have done anything differently, which I think speaks volumes to the league.
Yeah. And it probably was Roland. Roland, great guy. He's very passionate about the Houston Heat.
Yeah.
He really did everything that he could. I will say that. Like, he really did everything that he could to try and save the team. And one thing that, when I'd seen when, the news dropped about the new Houston team, it's like, especially with the whole Burmy thing, like, oh, they just came in and, they kicked the Houston team out, but that's really wasn't the case.
Yeah.
Last year was really like the last year for the Heat to show and prove, like, there's a standard of the WNFC. Everybody knows that there's a standard, and it comes with a lot of different things. It's not just the team that you have, right? Mm-hmm. It's the caliber of play that you have. Does this look marketable across the league? Does this match what everybody else is doing? And it kind of was like their last year to do that. And so, the opportunity was presented to us like, hey, we don't want to leave the Houston market, but we also can't have this, here. And so we feel like there's an opportunity for there to be a huge team here. You guys could really build a powerhouse. Is this something that you would be interested in doing? And we really sat down and thought about it. Like, is this something that we will be able to do? Because we're fresh off a season. Our plan was just to come to the game, sit in the stands, pay out $10, watch the games. And so when the opportunity was given to us, it's kind of like, dang, like, this is something that we really could do. And so we were like, you know what? Yes. Sign us up.
Yeah.
And in 3 months, so this was about mid-July, we really had to make a decision towards the end of July. So July, August, September, October, November, maybe 3.5 months. Yeah. We put all of this together. And it's a learning, it's kind of like a learning curve along the way, because I've never had to, get an LLC, work on nonprofit stuff. So we're all learning at the same time, but it's so rewarding. And I'm so appreciative of Dillo and OJ for really giving us this opportunity, because we're really building something special here. I mean, really building something special. And one of the things that I used to think about when I was a player with the Heat was, why can't we get girls out here? We live in like the 4th largest or 5th largest city in the US. Why are there no women that want to play football? Like, what is it? Yeah. And we would travel to some of these games with, 30 people. Sometimes it would be 10, 15, 20 people that show up to practice. And it's hard to really get reps in when people don't come to practice, And so
that's right.
You practice how you play, and it's really, the product that we're putting on the field. And so for us, when we said, hey, we have a team, I mean, the people were flooding from everywhere. And we were like, where did all these women come from? Because before it used to be like, where are all the women? And now it's like,
the opposite.
Where are all the women? And it's like, geez, another one. Yes, come to practice. And so now it's like, we used to have problems like, now we have good problems. It's like everybody wants to be here. Yeah. And that's a cool thing, because now it's just kind of like, great, we're laying all the cards out on the table. Like, there is a market for Houston to be a super competitive team. I mean, you've seen we snagged one of the number 1 running back in the US. Right. That you posted. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so the opportunity is definitely here for us.
So what would you attribute that to, Kyhle? The fact that you saw the questions being, where are all the women, to it turning to where are all these women coming from? Would you attribute that to the WNFC? Would you attribute it to the Mambas, like, message, like how they're running the organization? Would you say it's a mixture of all those things, or what would you say is a reason?
I think it is a mixture of everything. Okay. After they made the announcement that the Houston Heat was being dismantled, a lot of the ladies from the Heat were like, what the hell? Where are we going to play? We don't want to go to the WFA. It's nothing against the WFA, but they've been able to play at this level. And it's kind of like, there's no way. Like what are
You
we
don't
gonna
want to
do?
go down. Right.
Yeah, and they were in distress, and so we couldn't say anything, just at that moment. But we're like, just keep working out, stay patient. Something's gonna happen. Just keep hope alive. And so I think because people know who myself, Tierney Dash, Keisha Smith, and DeAndre Hopkins are, us, all of that aside, like they understand who we are as players, and they're like, I've been able to play alongside you. I've been able to watch Smitty, play, and she's phenomenal. I mean, phenomenal wide receiver. Tierney, she's a phenomenal, DN. So they know that we understand what it's like to be the player.
Mm-hmm.
And so with that player perspective, and I think that's one of the things that we really harp on is like, we have that player perspective. And have been in a program where we were just kind of like, like if I owned a team, I would probably do this different, do that different, do that different. And here we are, we're able to actually do this different and do that different and do this different. And
how cool is that?
It's very cool. And starting with the coaching staff, that was super important to us. We wanted to make sure that every single player had a position coach.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody.
Yeah, full staff.
Full staff, because sometimes when you just have, 2-3 coaches, you can't really get that individual attention that players need. You have a lot of vets, you have a lot of rookies. There are people that already know what's going on. They've been in the game a long time. And then you have the girls that have potential, they're athletic, but they don't have football IQ. So we want to make sure that, hey, all of you DBs, y'all go over there with your coach. All of, quarterbacks, wide receivers, you're over here. All of the O-line, D-line, y'all have one coach, but we'll split y'all. All O-line do this, all D, so we want to make sure that everybody has the attention that they need. They can ask the questions that they have comfortably. We interviewed a lot of coaches. I was just asked about this the other day, like, what was the process for coaches? And I said, I almost feel like it's like going on a first date, right?
Kinda.
We talk on the phone for a little bit, it's like, see how this works out. Yeah, conversation's cool. You're not giving off weird vibes. Right. And then it's like, let's meet up. And so we had a 2 to 3 part interview for our coaches. We interviewed them via Zoom, talked to them, get their mindset. Then we wanted to see, what type of coach you are. Were you strategic? Were you more tactical? What is your schemes like, your plays, et cetera, et cetera. And then on field, tryouts were not only for the players, but also for the coaches, because we need to see, what kind of coach are you?
Yeah, you're a new team.
Coach, people can tell you things all day long on, right. But when you get to actually doing it, it's like, does this match what's on paper?
Right.
And we had some coaches where that was the case, didn't match. And, it's no hard feelings, but as a business owner now, we have to think about what's best for our players.
Absolutely.
You don't want people just for the sake of saying like, yeah, we've got 10 coaches, but 6 of them can't coach. That's not what we want.
Right.
So
yeah. Quality over quantity. I got you. So I have several questions. I'm trying to think where we should start. Let's see. How much do you know about the WNFC teams? So like, I know you played for the Heat and you were in the league, but I don't know, like I would be guessing. I don't know, like players in WNFC that play for other teams, specifically teams that aren't by Denver, right? Because I'm with Denver. So like, if you're on the East Coast, you know what I mean? Or you're down south or whatever, and you don't play Denver, obviously you know about us. Like we're a good team. If you're in the WNFC, you probably know of all the teams, but how much you know about them teams, or how much you know what I mean? Like keep up with them, or like, whatever. I don't know. I'd be guessing. So I guess my first question is how, because this is honestly, I have no idea what your answer is. How much would you say you know about the WNFC teams, like as a whole, being a player last year for the Heat? Like, did you just know about the top teams or only teams you're playing? Or do you know about, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know the answer.
Yeah, I knew. So I knew about the top teams, and then I knew about the teams that were playing. I had the opportunity to play with some of the players that play across all 17 teams, just playing in AFE. I feel like AFE really introduced me to a wide variety of players, because I didn't really get to see a lot playing in 8-man and playing on some of the WFA teams that I played on. Right. I think with the regulators, I spent at least 4 seasons, and I think they were like a D3 or maybe even almost developmental for the WFA. So we weren't really, we only played in Texas and the same teams over and over and over. So I didn't really get that exposure of the players until AFE, where I was able to meet, the Londons, the Specs, the Tories, all the people across the board. So I'm not going to say that I'm like a WNFC guru. I know everybody, but I'm learning along the way, the teams, the players, etc.
Okay. And then my next question is, since your ownership group, it's you, Miss Dash, Smitty, and DeAndre, right?
Correct.
So it sounds like, this is an assumption, you can tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds like DeAndre is involved, like he maybe can help financially. I don't know what his role is, but he's obviously busy, right? He plays in the NFL. Like he is who he is. And so I assume that you 3 ladies kind of hold it down when he's not around, and like you make sure that everything's full steam ahead. So my question for you is, and you can tell me if that what I just said is wrong, but since there is 3 women as ownership group, no offense to women, but like, has it been hard to like find common ground to agree on things? Like, has there been a lot of butting heads? I mean, people have different personalities, different experience. You know what I'm saying? Like,
right. No, actually, it hasn't. We all work very, very well together. We were all already friends before all of this.
Right.
And so we felt like, what better group of people to be the team owner than us, right? Everybody knows us. They look up to us. They love us. So it's kind of like, why, if not us, then who, right?
Okay.
Not us, then who? And so we all have equal parts. We do still talk to DeAndre. He does give us the time that he does have. We loop him in on everything. We know that he's super busy, but we run things by him like, hey, we're getting ready to do this, or we're thinking about doing this. What do you think about it? And he's and he's a man of few words. He's like, yeah, I like it, or nah, let's look at something else. But for the most part, we don't bump heads. We all get along. We bounce ideas off each other. And really, I think the dope part about all of us is like, we all have different skill sets, which are necessary for the group. So everybody brings, something different to the dynamic, which is amazing, because if we all just had one skill set with all the things you have to do to run a team, then we probably would be like, oh, but it works for us.
Gotcha. That's awesome. Yeah, I've always been curious about that, because I only found out about the Mambas a few months ago, and I heard the ownership group, and there's a lot of buzz, and then I saw some big signings that you guys were able to grab some good players. But I've been curious ever since, right? And that's why we're having this interview. I'm curious about how that looks, right? How it looks if somebody's watching my podcast and they're interested in the Houston Mambas, or maybe they want to come over this year, or maybe next season, or maybe they're going to move to Houston, whatever the case is, right? These interviews are able to give them an inside look, right, of the actual organization. How does it look? How does 3 female owners look? Is that a mess? Are they always arguing with each other? Nobody's on the same page, or are they best friends? You know what I mean? And everything is kosher and it's all good. That's a huge difference, right?
Right.
Huge difference between 3 women and a guy that are never on the same page, to 3 women that are best friends that all have different strengths, like you said, that complement each other so well and are always on the same page and go out of their way to be on the same page. That's a huge, you know what I mean?
And we've always been family, and we really preach not only that to each other, but our team. It's family first. And these ladies already know that if something is happening, in their life outside of football, they can come to us and they feel comfortable talking to us. And that's really so important to us. It's like family first, because a lot of these women are just meeting for the first time and become like sisters for, lifelong after, season ends and all that. And that's really the environment that we want to harvest. This is family before anything. Don't get me wrong. Nobody wins when the family feuds, but we try to keep it, we try to keep the bond as tight as we possibly can. And that's really, when we bring people in, when they come to the city and they're like, tell me about Houston, we take them out. We show them around the city. We let them have a good time to show them like, this is the environment that, you will be around. This is the energy that we want to harvest. We work really hard, but we play hard too.
So I have a nosy question. So I've been involved with women's football for about 8 years, semi-pro men's football too, for about the same amount of time. And what I've seen is sometimes somebody will start a new team. Of course, in semi-pro football, teams fold all the time and teams are created all the time. And usually the reason that happens is because somebody thinks they can do it better, right? And sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, right? But what I've seen is that some owners that were previous players, what they'll do is they'll start a team with the intention of being owners, only doing admin type stuff, not playing anymore. Like you said, you played for 12 years. Your body is what it is. You've had injuries, but what they do, and this is, I know this is a nosy question, but what they do, Kyhle, is they'll put their names on the roster, right? Just in case
I got to suit up one more time.
Yeah. Like if stuff goes south, or like, you guys have a whole bunch of crazy injuries. They just kind of leave that door open. You know what I mean? Right. Just in case they need to play. So is it fair to assume that you three would do that or not? So
Nah. We joke about it, but really we are more than happy in the space that we're in. And I feel like, I've probably said that I was retiring like 5 consecutive seasons. This is my last year. This is my last year. And the last season that I had, and I'll just be honest, I had a shitty season last season. I don't feel like the product that I put on the field was the player that I was. And I was put in a position to play a position that I don't play. So I didn't really see the field. But in hindsight, I feel like it set me up for this moment for me to be on this ownership crew, because I was more in a leadership role. I was more active and like coaching on the sideline, being a mentor to all the rookies that came in. And, I was like, you know what, like in my heart of hearts, I really feel like my time as a player has really ran its course, because I don't have that itch, that desire to, be like, I'm going to put my name on the roster just in case, I really don't have that. And I love the fact that I'm kind of in this space, because it is difficult when you've been an athlete your whole life, and it's just kind of like, okay, it's time to quit, and you don't want to, but really last season I was like, it's time to quit, and I'm really good with quitting. But, I said, man, after football's done, what am I going to do? I'm going to have all this time on my hands. I still want to be a part of the WNFC. I have no idea how I'm going to do that. And then here comes this opportunity. So I'm very happy to be here. None of us, you won't see us on the field at all next season. And if you do, we can go back and rewind this film.
Like I said, remember what you said.
Me a liar, but no, we are all set on not playing anymore.
Would you say that Dash and Smitty are on the same page? Like they're not really interested in playing any longer?
Yeah, we are equally. But we're all, and we always say that we're old. We're still in our 30s, but these injuries put a number on your body. And I've had some pretty hefty injuries to where I'm just kind of like, I can't.
Yeah.
I'm 30 something going on 70 at this point. And I don't want to do it anymore. I don't want to do it.
Well, I'm just thinking about it, Kyle. I'm thinking like, okay, Houston Mambas, their first game ever, right? Houston Mambas' first game ever. Maybe it's in Houston, maybe it's somewhere else, but yeah, you have the game, and then it's about to happen, right? You've had months of practice. You got your coaching staff is down on point. The team is starting to mesh. They got the plays down. You feel like they're as prepared as they can be. But now it's game day, right? So you're about to play, and you're about to see how does that actually look on the field, right? How does all this stuff look? You're about to see the product of all the hard work you put in, but you're doing it from like an owner's perspective, right? Which is kind of an observer.
Right.
So in the past, you've been able to prepare as a player and build up, and then the payoff is playing.
Right.
So I feel like that will be interesting for you, all three of you, really, for you guys to have to take that, like all that anxiety about, okay, today's the day. I have all these jitters about how this is going to go, but I have no control. Like, it is what it is. Like, you know what I mean? Like, the coaches are the coaches. We believe in them, but
right.
we're hoping for the best. But we're about to see what happens. You know what I mean? And like,
yes,
it's going to be a totally different, you know what I mean? Like, thing for you guys, all three of you.
Yeah, it will. And I feel like we had that same feeling on National Tryout Day, because we had people register, you know, and people will register, but that doesn't mean that they're going to show up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so we get there and, you know, we're setting up the table and girls are coming in and more girls are coming in and more girls are coming in. And we're like, you know, and Tierney and I, we had a moment where we had to we walked outside of the gate and kind of went in between the car and we were like, oh, you know, and it was just a moment of like, oh, yeah. But it was dope just to really sit back and like watch, you know, the younger women and the competitors and the people that played before that were like, I'm coming out of retirement because I want to play for you a season. I want to play for Coach Soho. You know, I want to be a part of this new movement. And so it is so awesome. It really is awesome. And I really think, you know, I will probably feel like, man, I wish I was playing, but that is probably going to be like a very small percentage of of that, for sure.
You. All right, fair enough. So I want to touch on the Houston Energy. So I'm pretty involved with women's football. I've interviewed a lot of people on my podcast. One of the guys was a DC for the Houston Energy. Because when I've coached, my first gig as a coach was with the Mile High Blaze in the WFA, obviously out of Denver. I was their head coach for the first 4 years. Won more games than we lost for sure. And then I was fired after our best season ever, which is hilarious. But then I took a year off, and that's when the WNFC started. And they had a team in Denver that was going to be starting, right? And I'm like, well, if it's the other team, the Colorado Freeze, that like quit my team to start a new team, and they were kind of a joke to me, I'm not going to be involved with that. But they weren't. They were a team that they were people that had quit the Colorado Freeze to make a new team that was going to be better. And I'm like, well, maybe I can get with that, right? So OJ reached out to me and said, hey, we have a new kind of like the conversation with you. We have a new team in Denver. I think you should be involved if you're willing to. You know, it's worth at least talking about. And so here we are, you know, 4 or 5 years later, and the Denver Bandits are a really good team, in my opinion, that I'm really honored to be a part of. But the reason I'm bringing up the Energy is the Houston Energy, in my opinion, has been the class of Houston for women's football for as long as I've been involved.
Yeah.
Right. And so since that's been the case, I'm interested to hear your feedback. I know you said you were with the Energy briefly on a season that didn't happen. So you probably know a little bit more than most people about that team, but I'm interested in the dynamic of that, right? So like Houston's a very unique city because it's so big. Right. You guys have like a plethora of teams, right? The Houston Power, the Houston Energy, there was a Houston Heat, other teams you mentioned, which is unique, and I wouldn't say funny, but it's like it kind of makes you scratch your head, because it's like, well, why would you have 5 teams and spread out all the talent when you could have 2 teams and 2 really good teams, right? But that's part of semi-pro football, so it is what it is. So I guess my question for you with Houston Energy is, since they've been the class of women's football in Houston for so long, how do you look at that? Like, do you look at it as they're not in our league, so they have nothing to do with us? Like, we're on a separate path, and like, obviously we're trying to build something different from what they're building, and we're confident that we're going to be able to do that. But, you know, it would be foolish to not like be realistic that they have been doing it for a while, and they've been a good team for a while. And so obviously they're doing some things right, but how do you look at that dynamic? Like, you guys are pretty much the 2 teams in Houston. And I know you guys already signed one of their players, but like, how do you look at that dynamic? Is it just like you're separate leagues, they have nothing to do with us? Or do you look at that as like they're direct competition? We want to play them in a preseason game. Like, let's get it going. Like, how do you view all that?
I don't think either myself or anybody on our staff has really looked at it like, ooh, like we're competing with, Houston Energy. We definitely, first and foremost, I mean, I love Coach Wig. I think he's a phenomenal coach. He does a lot for the ladies. He's probably one of the other coaches that I've been able to play for that really cares for the players, not only just on the field, but outside of the field.
Yeah, as people.
When we went on our AFE trip and we were stuck in Honduras, he sent money for us to like get flights for when we actually made it back to the States, because the planes came and picked us up and just dropped us off in Charleston. And it was just kind of like, well, how are we going to get back to Texas? And he really made sure that, all of the Houston people, like, they were good. He's like, this money, y'all make sure y'all get flights, y'all get home. And, that was the case. And I respect him so much as a man, as a coach, father figure. And so for us, it's never been like, we're going to compete with them. They're in their own market, and Wig has been doing that. I think the Energy is like 20 years old, honestly, that team.
They've been around for a while.
Yeah, they've been around for a while. And so I've been able to be a part of his organization and really see what organization looks like, right?
Yeah.
He is a no nonsense guy. So when, he's fun, but when we get to football, like, it's about football. We're not here to play around. We're on a mission. It's time to clock in, it's business. And so I feel like I loved his structure for practices, because it's the same way all the time. You already know what you're going to get. Practice starts at 9, at 8:55, everybody's already lined up, ready to go. When the whistle blows, we're out. We have your individual coaches that you're working with. You have indies, 7 skills, teams, whatever. Everything is so well put together. And I love that. And I know that all of the women that he has over there, they're loyal. So getting Energy players to come play for us, that was going to be like a no, like they weren't. Even if they want to, I'm sure they're not going to, because of the loyalty that they have for Brian. And I don't blame them. So, there is no like,
us versus them. Yeah. I got you.
It's not us versus them. It's just kind of like, hey, we wish y'all the very best season that y'all can have, and likewise. And Brian's always returned good energy to us, so it's not like a competitive.
Okay, that's fair. So they're obviously in a different league, and they're probably going to be a good team this year, like they always are. So it sounds like, since you were able to be on that team briefly, you got an inside look at how they run things, which you appreciate, which you're actually able to bring that to this team, like, as a strength.
Yeah, the organizational structure. Yeah.
Yep. And then, like you said, you have a huge amount of respect for Wigs. And so it sounds like it's just all good vibes. Like, you wish them the best. They're in a different league. You're not really directly competing with them. You're not trying to actively recruit their players, but if they want to come, they can come, of course. But that's good. I mean, I guess my last question for the Houston Energy would be, are you guys interested in pursuing them? Because that's what we do. We try to make sure that every single season we have at least one preseason game, so that the first time our rookies play is not in the first real game. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like a dress rehearsal. You know what I'm saying? So like, I feel like since you guys are so close, it's a no-brainer. Like, they're a good team, you're a good team. You guys need the work. You know what I mean? So whether it's a preseason game or a scrimmage or inter team practice, whatever, you know what I mean? If there's good vibes, there's no reason not to. So would you say that that's fair to assume that you guys would pursue that?
So I feel like that probably is something that we would pursue. We have not even, talked about it yet, whether we were going to reach out about scrimmaging them. Because right now our focus is really the X's and O's of the game. Like, we literally want to start from the bottom up. And again, like I was saying earlier, for some veteran players, they're going to be like, why do we have to go through this? But it's important. Fundamentals, techniques, football IQ, all of those things, that's kind of where we're starting. So that's where our main focus is right now. And then as we get into, starting to go through playbooks and getting, all these moving pieces together, then at that point, we'll put it in the coach's staff's hand to say, hey, we have the opportunity to scrimmage, the energy, or we could go to Louisiana, or we could play whomever, what is it that you guys want to do? And so we really try to keep the organizational stuff in the organizational stuff, and then let the coaches,
I
do what they're going to do.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it makes sense for you guys to be focusing on what you're focusing on. But I mean, it's something to keep in mind, right? Like when time comes and you want to make sure that your first game isn't your first game. I mean, they're right across town. You know what I mean? They're a good team. They're going to give you a good look. It's a no-brainer, in my opinion. And so I don't know if you value my opinion, but I feel like no-brainer, especially because you guys are on good terms. You know what I mean? There's a lot of teams that are in the same city and they don't like each other. You know what I mean? They're not trying to help each other. They're not trying to, you know what I mean? They're talking bad about each other and stupid stuff like that. So kind of a no-brainer. Next question. We only have a couple questions left. I appreciate your time. Is about Coach Soho and female coaches in general. And then lastly, Denver, right? So a little birdie said that there's a chance that Denver might play Houston this season. And so I might be seeing you sooner than later, which is exciting. You know what I mean? Like we're talking about this new team and your guys' baby of this organization you guys have built from ground one. And so that's so dope. For me, it's not about Denver. It's not about me. It's about women's football and the advancement of women's football. So when I see elite athletes like Deja Scott signing to the WNFC, I'm excited. You know what I mean? Like that makes my day. It's not about like if she signed for, if she signed with San Diego or Utah or whatever. Just the fact that she's in our league excites me, right? Like that hypes me up. And so I've seen a lot of your guys' signings that have been like good. And I don't know all the players. Like I don't claim to know everybody, but I know enough, right? That I know like some names. Like I liked your running back from Houston Heat a lot. She signed with you guys, Brooke. I know who Amber Perry is. She's a good DB. You guys got her. The girl from the Houston Energy, is it Nene Franklin?
Yeah, Nene Franklin.
Yeah. So I know some names, right? If you guys have announced 20 players, I probably know about 10 of them. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like half and half. So I probably got to nerd out a little bit on the rest. But you guys have done a great job of signing good athletes so far. But my question for you has to do with Coach Soho and female coaches. Now, this isn't meant to be a curveball question. This is just a real conversation, right? So, like, I don't know Coach Soho. I don't know her. I know of her, right?
Right.
And so, obviously, she's a respected coach. You guys are former players. You sure as hell would not have your first ever head coach be some knucklehead that doesn't know what they're doing. Obviously, because you're former players. You know how that feels, right? So that part's a no-brainer. I already know that answer. I don't need to ask you. But what I do need to ask you is, when it comes to female coaches, it's very obvious to me that the WNFC is about women empowerment, women in leadership roles, whether that be ownership, coaching, et cetera, et cetera. So since that is the case, my only caution for that, Kyle, is that I wouldn't want teams to appoint women in roles just because they're women. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
so like, it makes sense that you, Dash, and Smitty are the owners because you're former players, you're respected, you're connected, people know you, people like you, and you guys are all on the same page, you're best friends. That all makes sense. And this interview let me understand that, right? That all makes perfect sense. But then when you move it over to coaches, like we have a female head coach in Philadelphia. Obviously, OJ is the female coach for Texas. And so now we have Coach Soho for Houston. I don't know Coach Soho, but I know she's respected. So how do you it's a hard question to ask. So like, how do you gauge if a coach is ready for that big of a role, right? So some female coach might be ready to be a really good position coach, right? Or maybe a female coach is ready to be a really good OC or a DC. But head coach heavy lies the crown. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
The buck stops with you, starts and stops with you. So that's a big decision to make about who your head coach is going to be, because you want to do everything correctly. So how did you guys land on that? You know what I mean? Like, since I don't know Coach Soho, how did you, I know you said the interview process is pretty thorough, but how did you guys land on that being the best option?
So she was the first option for us. Coach Soho is the myth, the woman, the legend, right? And I mean that in every sense of the word. Her coming to the WNFC one, monumental. Her coming back to coaching women's football, two, monumental, because she had stepped away from coaching women. She was coaching in the men's league. She lives actually in Richmond, Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. She coaches the men's semi-pro team, the Crew.
Okay.
And they are undefeated. They have the #1 defense, and she's everything. She literally is everything. And when I have had the opportunity to play for her, she had taught me so many life lessons, not only as an athlete, but as an African-American woman, an African-American lesbian woman, and, how to navigate through, working a corporate job, dealing with, my family members that were military that, may have PTSD, how to go, deal with things like that. She's really like an all around person, and she cares so much about the women. She cares so much about football. She cares so much about the game. And for her, she always says, this is bigger than football. Like, it's bigger than football. And she always makes sure to let you know that it's bigger than football. It's not just like, oh, okay, come to practice, do this. She's very vested. I mean, she has relocated from, Virginia to Houston just to come for the season to be head coach. And I mean, that doesn't tell you the level of commitment already. Then, I mean, I don't know what else does, but we have, when she told us, yes, that I'll be your head coach, it was almost as a win that's getting, D Scott. Like, it was like, yes, this is
we did it.
This is the one, that we needed. And I mean, you'll see. That's all. That's really all I can say about her. Like,
no, that's what's up. Really since I don't know her, I've heard of her, right? I guess my question was just like, tell me about her. You know what I mean? Like, since I don't know her, like, I don't know her background. I don't know who she's coached, women wise or men wise, how much success she's had. But that's why I asked you the question. You know what I mean? Like, tell me about Coach Soho and how you guys landed on her. So that's awesome. I mean, it sounds like she's more than qualified for the position. And the fact that you had your experience with her and you were able to learn so much about football and life from her is kind of a no-brainer. So, like, that's awesome. I mean, and the fact that she relocated for you, that doesn't speak volumes. I don't know what does. So, like,
it was definitely a win. And we love Coach Soho. We love everything she stands for as a coach, her coaching style. She will be double hatting for us as head coach and defensive coordinator. So that's a dope dynamic there, to see how that goes. And it's going to be great. It's going to be great. Like, I don't want to say too much, but we working over here.
Yeah. That's what's up. Yeah. Yeah. But like you said, you guys had a crazy amount of women at the tryout. I personally have never had, I've never had the numbers that we had last year. So I've been coaching for about 8 years. And I was used to what you said, having 18 players at practice. I mean, when I first started coaching the team in the WFA, I remember having 6 players at practice, right? And trying to figure out, how as the head coach, am I going to actually make like this not a waste of their time? How am I going to make 6 players? Like, how am I going to make this work? I think it made me a better coach to try to figure that out and try to figure out, like, what do you do? How do you do more with less? But my point is that last season for Denver was the first time in my coaching career I was able to see a team being ran kind of the way it should be ran. So what I mean by that is having 35 plus at practice. So you can go 11v11 whenever you need to. That's huge. You can't expect to prepare for Utah Falcons, San Diego Rebellion, Texas Elite Spartans if you can't go 11v11 in practice. It's just big facts. It's common sense. It's not rocket science, right? So the fact that the Denver had 35 plus at practice, the fact that our roster was 50 or 60 players, the fact that we had about 10 players playing from out of state, 5 or 6 that were international players, all that stuff added up to this really big team. And we had a full coaching staff, like you said. So position coaches for every single position. So like the fact that we had all those things and checked all those boxes, I was like a kid in the candy store. Like I was like, man, it's kind of like you said, you don't know which you don't have until because you never had it.
Right.
But like once you have it, you're like, oh my gosh, I want that from now on. You know what I mean? So like it's just wild to me. And I hope you guys have the same experience. But Denver's in a place now where we have good numbers, we have a lot of talent, we have good coaches. And so now we're in that tier of those teams trying to catch Texas. And I think I'm not trying to, kiss your butt, but I think that Houston Mambas in year one are going to immediately be in that tier of teams that are just trying to catch Texas and may the best team win. You know what I'm saying? So like, that's so exciting to me. It's so exciting to me to see another team that's going to be in that echelon. Cause like, if you have a team join and they're, not very good, they go 0-6 and they're not competitive, like it doesn't help the brand. You know what I'm saying? So like, the fact that you guys are joining and on year one, you're ready to go and you have the great head coach and these top recruits, like I'm so excited. You know what I mean? Like,
us too. We really are.
Yeah. Of course I want my team to win. You know what I mean? So if we play, it is what it is. But like, more importantly than my selfish desire to win is for the league, you know what I mean? For women's football to be better. And so like women's football needs this. Women's football needs to see top teams play each other. You know what I'm saying? Like we're not afraid. We want all the smoke. You know what I'm saying? So like, it's just fun, man. This is how it's supposed to be. This is in the WNFC gives you the opportunity to play this crazy schedule where you're going to be battle tested and you know what I mean? It's going to fall where it falls. So I couldn't be more excited. My last question for you is, what do you know about Denver? I know that's a nosy question, but obviously we were a good team last year. But what do you know about us? Like, that you signed Tori. She was our quarterback. But do you know anything about us, like besides just that we had a good season, or like what is your?
I know that y'all lost quite a few players. I mean, like the Las Cruces group, I guess you could say. Those group of people. London and I are really good friends. We've been friends for quite a while. So she sends me her little text messages, talk shit to me. I've played with her. I've played with Specs. I played with Kelly. I feel like I played with a good handful. So I know y'all got some dogs on the team.
Yeah.
That I do know. And in the event that we do play you guys, or don't play you guys, I think you guys will still have a phenomenal season. I know you guys went 7-1 last season, right?
Yes, we won every game until the Western Championship. We lost. Okay. We had beaten Utah twice, and they beat us in the third meeting in the playoffs. Unfortunately, they had some trick plays that worked, and it is what it is. Actually, an overtime game. So
I watched that game. That one hurt me because I was like,
man.
Y'all had a really fire season last year. And I know that, for y'all, I'm sure it's probably like, this is redemption. Like, we have to go there and further, and so I know.
You're aware. Okay.
Yes, I'm very aware.
That's fair. Well, I won't take any more of your time, Kyhle. It's been an honor to talk to you. I got some insight on the Houston Mambas. And I'm excited, man. Like, I'm excited for the season. I'm excited for the WNFC. I'm excited to see Coach Soho. I want to meet her. You know what I'm saying? I want to see her in action. I'm not looking forward to playing D. Scott. Got to be real with you. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't join the WNFC and not want the smoke. And so, you know,
Right. Yeah, I'm definitely excited. And, I actually talked to Dilla earlier today and I was like, if nobody's ever told you thank you for everything that you do, thank you. Today,
Yeah.
tomorrow, yesterday, next year, last month,
Yeah.
and I'm just very, very, very appreciative. We are all appreciative for Dillo and OJ for really trusting us with this opportunity and building a powerhouse team, and really saving the Houston market for, the WNFC, because we would hate to not have a WNFC team here. So, we're excited and we're motivated and, we're eager, anxious. It's like, is it April yet? But also like time is going by too fast. And so,
Yeah. A lot of moving parts.
Yes, lots. But it's good. It's stressful, but
it'll be worth it though.
Stress was a good thing, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what's up. Well, it's great to meet you, Kyle. I'll definitely, if we do play you guys, I'll definitely hit you up. You know what I mean? So I can we can go grab dinner or whatever. Maybe the day before or day after. I can buy you guys dinner. Maybe Smitty will come along. But yeah, I can't wait, man. I can't wait for the season. I wish you guys the best. Unless you're playing Denver, I hope you win all your games. You know what I'm saying? especially Texas, man. If you guys are able to beat Texas in your first season, ooh-wee. I mean, yeah. I think the women's football world might like not know what to do themselves. You know what I'm saying? Because like they're so used to Texas winning, but we're gonna see. I mean,
yeah, it's gonna be a dope year. It really is gonna be a dope year. And again, to your point, top WFA players coming to the league. It's nice to see a lot of the, players that are going to different teams, top players in WC going to other teams. And so this will be an exciting year. I honestly, however it fares out, this probably will be one of the dopest WNFC years, seasons that will have ever happened. And we're just getting started. There's so much more growth with this league. So
amen.
Cheers to that.
Well, it's great to meet you. I appreciate your time. I'll be posting this podcast probably this Friday or Saturday. So when I do that, I'll tag you on Facebook, of course, so you can share it. But yeah, it's been great. It's been awesome talking to you. I wish you luck this season, and we'll talk soon.
All right, Terry. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
All right, you too.
All righty. Bye-bye.